Okay, so I'm gonna start the demonstration of the lips. I selected a lips from the cast sculptures there. You can choose any of them, but make sure that you draw from the photo reference. I don't want you to Google and then pick like a shape of the lips. That's not what I'm looking for. So I provided the cast. Those are plaster sculpture pieces for you to draw, and I included the skull as well. That's very challenging, and that may be for the advanced students, but some people may want to try the skull because it's always fun to draw a skull, but it is very difficult. Anyway, so I've selected ellipse, and the same thing. Um, I have a same setup, and I'm just gonna draw the lips. When you're looking at the paper, I have it horizontal because um, this is the setup for myself. But when you're looking at the papers, you can choose. For example, if you're doing a nose, it might be better to do the vertical because the foam itself is very vertical. The squares are slightly elongated, rectangular shape, but I think you should look at the placement. Remember, we had the positive and negative space. This assignment doesn't necessarily concern too much of the positive and negative because this is really about the positive shapes, but you can see the placement, the way you locate them, the size, top and bottom, how much empty space you created, because at the end you want to kind of keep it so that the drawing looks finished, right? Okay, so I'm looking at the lips, and remember, always start with the gesture drawing, right? Because this gives you the kind of general idea of the placement and how the drawing occupy the papers. It's very important. That's part of the compositions, right? Okay, and also in terms of working on the proportion, you have to start with the gestures, right? Because gesture drawing gives you a kind of pretty good sense of like a weight and placement, right? And then it's also soft and rough enough that you can change things around, right? And contour drawing is important because the contour really kind of picks up the minute direction of the shift, which reflect or influence the realness of the sculptures, right? It kind of relates with the proportion. So right now I have this lips on this sort of like a plaster piece, and it seems okay, right? And you can do the siding of it. So I have a reference right here. It's not included in the camera, but I have a same reference, and so it almost like 1 1/4. So the height, if this is 1, the width supposed to be about 1 1/4. So 1 and 1/4. That's the ratio. One, and this is the width, and this is the height, right? So if this is 1, the width supposed to be 1 1/4. So if it's 1, and this is 2, so that's halfway. So I could slightly making them small, like so. I might just scrape this off a little bit more, right? Okay, and then see the center line of the lips? That seems like not quite halfway, right? But there's more on this side than here because this is in a 3/4 angle because it's not right in front of the view. So it seems like this is where, and then the center of the lips, the location of it, it almost like halfway down. If this looks like half, this looks like half. 1 and 2. So around here should be the center of the lips, right? See how rough it is, right? Okay, now I'm going to just roughly draw This is what I mean by contour drawing, right? I'm really kind of feeling the shape. See how it's quite flat here, you know. You would assume it might be more round, but it's quite flat here, right? And then the upper lips are quite thick as well, right? Okay, so this is kind of, it's a good sort of like a placement here. And I realized that a little curved linear shape here, it's not quite straight. Okay, like so. And I'm actually showing way too much of the top, so I have to close it up a bit. So like so, meaning I have to make the top portion, dimensions a little skinny and thin. Okay. Do not make a very dark outline. Remember, it's gonna be very difficult to erase for you. So this is good. And I even just kind of make a little softer. It's like, oh, I'm making a mess. No, I'm not. You know, I'm building from here. So there you go, right? So using the same charcoal, I'm gonna apply like a big patches of like shaded area that I know that looks very dark, and you can really simplify this dark area. So for example, like here it looks like a kind of triangular shape, but this way, and that's how I interpreted it, and that's how I applied to it, right? And then I noticed that this area is a little flat because there's no volume of the lips. So I see a little bit of the shadow happening here, so I'll just apply that. Right now it doesn't have to look like anything, which is okay, right? Because it's in the beginning of it. Okay, so I see a little bit more shadow, and I see quite a dark shadow here, right? Okay, this is where a lot of movement actions happening, because that's the kind of full part of the lips. And I also see very dark shadow here, right under the lips. The lips looks very sculptural because of the volume and the cat shadow that's created by the volume. So right now I'm just kind of simply applying, and not too much here because I just don't see too much. Dark shadows here, blend it in, right? And don't make it too dark, because remember, you might have to erase it. Okay, and okay, so I see a quite dark shadow around the lips, right? This might be a good practice because you're working on the self-portrait the next assignment. So just kind of like understanding these rays and dips of, you know, facial sort of a plane. And this, you see that little bit of the dips, it's like a little hills, right? And there's gotta be highlights here, and it's like a landscape, it's like a little hill coming down. I don't have that sort of plan on information, but it's sort of building. The top, it's not necessarily the lightest area, so I'm just gonna gray it out here. Right on the side, I can't really tell what side is darker, front or the side, but it's not highlight, so I'm applying some kind of values, right? Okay, and this is a photograph, and I don't have any cat shadow, but I'm just gonna add it so that it kind of looks like it's sort of sitting in somewhere. You know, I'm just kind of visualizing. Okay, so see, I already have a pretty good kind of a placement and a general form. How this sculpture, that type of volume that is sort of applying there. So, okay, now this is not done right. Now I have to start going back and then build. So I go back to the area that's very obvious, that has a very dark shadow here. And I'll go back and make it a little bit more defined, right? And you have to go back and then blend them, right? And if the finger's not working well, use the chamois. You can dab it like so, or kind of use this kind of movement so that it really blends nicely, right? The plaster has a very softer surface, so I think the chamois will really work. In fact, I really like it a lot the way it looks, so I'm just gonna blend them like so. It's cool. Great. Just make everything a little soft, right? Okay. Can I erase that? Obviously. Right. Oh, I have some charcoal residue, so it creates that kind of accidental mark. That's okay. Okay, and if I really look at it, I started to notice that actually the upper lips has more shadow. So I'm gonna have to go back and apply the shadows, right? Okay, so like so, and it comes down and goes back. Oops, this is the big mistake. I'm gonna erase that. And I see like a very clear edges of the lips, right? Okay. And here I have blending cones. I see a little bit of the shadows here. What you can do, you can kind of do this, apply the charcoal from the charcoal sticks, and then do this. And there's a little softness of the lips. And I know that it's a little gray here, and then the highlights are kind of like around here. You don't want to build everything complete in one spot, because you know you're gonna have to change it later, right? So I'm gonna kind of move on to the lips. I have to move that, the heel, the indentation. That means I might have to move this top indentation as well, which is totally fine, right? Because I'm still like fixing the proportions and compositions, right? Okay. This is the outline, so at the end you don't want it, right? So I'm gonna have to do lots of blending, right? And I have to make sure that this outline will disappear to either the plane or information. So I would assume that by looking at it, this side is lighter. So I'll try to erase it so that I don't have this outline. Okay, and I still have that. That's okay, because I'm gonna make the lips darker so that the outline will blend the lip side of the value. See how that outline disappears, and now I have edges, right? Okay. My charcoal is a little, it has like hard edges, so I just have to kind of keep using so that it becomes round and round, so it's easier for me to blend. And remember the circular movement, and also this cross contour movement, which it really kind of create the movement of the volume itself. Okay, now I'm gonna take this and I'll apply a little bit of the highlights here, which seems very subtle, which is good. But I noticed that the lips in the the edges has a much more bright highlights, so that I will erase like so, right? And then you kind of go back and look and like, okay, now I'm gonna have to really, as I was like moving things around so that I lost a deep shadow there. So I go ahead and reapply. Okay, that's good. And I've noticed that that shadow almost kind of go through the center line of the lips. And I've noticed that, oh, there's actually a cat shadow right at the edge. I'm gonna have to do lots of blending here. And take some out. The fullness of the lips is actually very much fun to build. So more gray like this. I cannot achieve this volume just in a one trial, right? So I'm going back and forth doing this, highlights, blended highlights, right? Okay, great. Now I notice that, okay, I'm gonna really have to apply the value on the closed lip line here. Okay, and I just noticed like a little bit of the line at the edge here. I did this again, but I'm just reapplying that highlight because it's not quite there yet, right? So as you can see, the modeling really just kind of go back and forth about applying the right value in the right place with the, so eventually it really started to build. And see, I lost that very deep shadow again here, so I have to go back. And I noticed that it's a little bit more gray on this side compared to this side. See, this kind of information, when I started it, I don't notice it. You know, I'm just busy trying to capturing like the overall, you know, form. So now I'm working on it, I just really noticed that, oh, okay, so there's a little bit more gray here. And then I noticed that edges here are a little bit lighter. So I'm using this charcoal, the kneaded eraser, right? Go back and blend them. You can use the blending cone, but sometimes it kind of gives too much like strokes, which you want to make sure that you blend them, because you don't want them to look like a drawing. Even though this is a drawing, you know, the idea is to create an illusion, right? Illusion meaning it looks real. So I've noticed that cat shadow has to be very much darkened. This sort of transition of shadows, it takes a while for you to really build so it looks realistic. You know, I feel like this is maybe 20% or 30% is built. You know, I still have to do a lot of you know, building around here. right? And then so you know, this erasers are good for highlights, but also erasing and blending. This does the same, but more so for the highlights, right? Okay. Okay. So like that. So again, it's not completely done, but you can start to see how you can begin and develop, right? Uh, so good luck, and let me know if you have any questions.